keep doing,
Sorry, I forgot to press the card.
that's all right. If you keep doing the same thing and expect a different result, it's not going to happen. So it's not that you want to take a risk and risk money or risk your career or something. It's just an eagerness a willingness to open up to a new idea, which is a risk it might make the project go off target. It's that sort of risk, not.
Yeah, Neil, I really hear you. I'm just ditching Kevin's point. I think for me also, I find that line disengaging. I get the message, but I think that language is actually.
It's the eagerness. Then is the point that you were raising there, Adrian.
And risk maybe something new rather than risk.
Yeah. It is very much about expanding the comfort zones, as Neil was just saying. So the second aspect of the growth mindset is skills. So it's looking at really consistently looking to develop those skills to check whether or not this is the best that you can be. Is it the best? Are you doing the can you become better at what you do? Can you develop your skills further? Can you have that sort of improvement mindset? Can you constantly look at, even when you've done stuff, go back and say, how can I do this better? What else can I learn that can help this project run smoother in the future, this implementation to be more effective in the future? What other skills do I need? And as we say, what can we do better, and what do we need to do better? The third is effort, and the key here, I think, is that we can all ultimately have an easier life if we're doing stuff and we're being successful at it. It's the easiest option is just to continue to do what we've always done and get the same results. And the challenge comes when you're pushing that growth mindset to say, okay, it's going to be challenging to do things slightly different and to try things slightly different, but I'm up for the challenge. And it'll take some effort, but I'm prepared to make that extra effort, and I'm determined to see this through and get the results that I want. So it's very much about accepting that changing things and doing things differently and trying different things will take some effort, and be prepared to take it. That's the point I'm trying to raise here. The fourth aspect is how we manage setbacks. So as we go into through life, in projects and in our career, we will have setbacks. Absolutely. I'm sure all of us have not been in a project that's run perfectly smoothly all the way through. There will be setbacks as we go through. But the mindset that we need to adopt there is, how can we learn from that experience? What can we do differently to ensure that we've learned from it and we apply that knowledge in the future? And almost having that mindset that says, okay, I'm one step further. And I'm sure you've heard the story of the KFC, where he approached so many different restaurants to try to sell his recipe, or how the light bulb was developed. Something like 1,059 different experiments to get the light bulb. Could have easily given in after 5 or 6, like a lot of people will have done. So it's continually looking to try different things, learn from the experience, and basically accept that you're one step closer to the outcome that you're looking for, by taking feedback and knowledge from those setbacks that you get, and trying to learn from them as you move forward. And that links into the fifth area, which is feedback. So feedback from other persons, feedback from the activity that you're doing, feedback from your own sort of mindset in terms of how you feel as you sort of progress through the activity. So, do you recognize what you've done wrong? Can you identify those areas that you need to make those changes? Can you adapt and accept that by adapting, you are hopefully then moving down the path that you want to move down, and you'll get a better outcome. And fundamentally, how can you learn from others? You know, can you go and get feedback from other people that have tried to do the things that you're doing and have been successful at doing it, so that you can learn from them and get feedback from them. So fundamentally, you know, that those are the five that I think the five core elements that will help you to develop and maintain a growth mindset. What's your, you know, we've had some conversation already in discussion about the desire bit around the risk, but what's your thoughts about the other four areas? You know, do you agree? Do you vehemently disagree with some of the things I've just said there? And what's been your experience? And equally, what's been your experience of working with people within your teams that maybe haven't got that growth mindset? And how have you been able to adapt and reflect on those people?
I mean, I understand this to be the 1% club, to be around those that have got a consulting background. So my raison d'etre when I started 22 years ago was I've been in corporate world managing, directing thousands of people all over the world. And that in the end wore me down, particularly with September 11 and being on a plane when the buildings came down. My wife pretty much put her foot down at that point in time. Wow. So my aspirations afterwards was not to employ anybody, but to work with partnerships, but at the same time, make sure that I wasn't left carrying the baby if you ended up developing something and then somebody else bypassed you later on. So you got your fair share of the reward. But as I said, I'm not a massive risk taker, certainly with my own money.
Yeah.
So my ambition generally has been to make sure that the business was resilient with multiple clients, protected it from those sort of setbacks, catastrophes where something outside of your control may happen. But the growth mindset has generally still been that I don't actually want to build anything more than a small consultancy business where revenues would arise from non-people-based activities. They would be as a result of building the right partnerships, the right collaborations to be able to and build trust. And that generally I'm a giver, not a taker. So downstream that something will work for you if you've got it in the locker. But fundamentally, my model is not to grow in terms of bodies. So I don't know how that aligns with other people.
I think on a personal basis, rather than on the organizational basis, not growing a business, but growing yourself, I've noticed the opposite is true to all of those. If you get someone who's in a negative mindset and they're in your sphere, they bring everyone's ability and willingness to try something new, and because they get slapped down for it. You know, we don't do that here. Can you stop it? And I think that negative influence is really obvious and really telling, because you notice it more than people who are positive, because you just get swept up in the positivity and, well, let's try this, and have you thought of this, and you absorb that. Whereas with negative people, you tend to notice the effect on the project or yourself, so I think you tend not to notice the positive side so much, and people who are you just enjoy it more, and you don't almost notice yourself growing and enabling your skills to grow and your attitude to, well, let's try this, that could work, because people who don't want it would just say, no, we don't do that. And that's, I think, the negative is a stronger or a more noticeable influence than the positive. You just enjoy it more when you're in a positive environment.
Agreed. Adrian, you've got your hand up.
Yes, I was just reflecting on a couple of things, and the point there around growth. I think, or at least I'm seeing in the area that I play, which is around sustainability, at least, and purpose for business. The business world is and has to redefine what it means by growth as a whole industry. because most businesses set growth targets of, let's say 10%, they probably achieve around 2. There's a rule of 72, which is if you set your growth target at 9%, in 8 years' time, you'll be twice as big. And it's great, everybody wants to grow. But we can no longer define our growth based on volume, because if we all are twice as big, we need 2 planets, so we've only got 1 planet. There's not enough, there's not double the raw materials, for example. So everyone's looking at growth as a concept. And I think there's actually a broader topic here around growth that actually is much more philosophical, that needs to be considered. Because I think businesses are really trying to work out how are they defining their growth targets for the future. Because it can't be around market volume anymore, unless it's just about takeovers. And point around negativity that Neil raised, I think is a really valid one. I mean, Tony, my reflection, the lot of the language that's here is fundamentally negative. And when you look at a project and you do an after action review, or you do your best to capture the learnings, you focus on the negatives. And I've always striven to say, what have we done really well first? Let's talk about everything we did brilliantly first, because everyone wants to focus on what they did wrong and then correct it. And I think the one potential benefit here I would offer you to consider on the skills, I found really useful. I used it a lot. A lot of businesses use different review models for their people. Myers-Briggs is a fundamentally used one, albeit not scientifically based. But I found StrengthsFinder, which is the Gallup one, a really useful one, because it made me and my team reflect on what we were good at. So your question was, is this my best work? When I'm talking with teams about their activities, like, what are your strengths? And are you using those strengths to do this job? Because if you're not, you're going to be really pissed off. You're going to be really fed up because you're not bringing your best to the party. And therefore, you know, don't do that bit. You do this and someone else can do that. You can then match the skill sets of the team. But StrengthsFinder is great, but people still see it as like, well, what are the other, what's number 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10? I'm not doing them. It's like, no, it's your top 5.
Yeah.
Leverage your things you're good at, celebrate the things you're good at, celebrate what you did well in the project, but then also then review the learnings. Often people miss the, what do we do well and we must do that again.
Yeah.
And the sad thing is very few people read the after action review of the previous project before they do the next one. That's why this community and the people that they're bringing those skills and that learning to the project without having to go through the process.
Absolutely right, absolutely right. And as you say, having people working in an environment that one they're enjoying and have got the passion and the belief and the capabilities to do, if you can get everybody in that environment, the program, the team, the organization will be significantly more successful. But as you say, all too often that's not the case. You end up getting round pegs in square holes. Kim.
Yeah, I just think growth mindset to me has kind of been one of those buzzwords that's come up over the last couple of years. So thank you for clarifying what it means to me, because I hear it and I didn't actually know what it meant. But I think if I look at the last 18 months and now being out on my own and having a consulting firm, I think as a consultant, a growth mindset is so important, because you're going to get setbacks, you're going to have feedback, or you're looking for feedback. And I think for me, being relatively new into this, though I have a 30-year career and I'm quite relaxed with that, this is a whole new world. So I think each step that you called out, and for me, there is an element of risk in doing what we're doing as well. I think I lived this a lot more than maybe I did at the tail end of my corporate career, because we kind of just become a little complacent. We've done it for so long. So this is, yeah, I completely support what you say, and just think that doing what I do now, I kind of have to have this, because when I go into a client, I don't want to walk in with, this is the way I do it, this is the way we're going to do it. You have to be open. You've got to be collaborative and kind of co-create things with them. So this growth mindset, I think, is kind of at the forefront of what I do. And maybe it differentiates me a little bit from some of the others I go in against, because I am open and trying to create something that's specific and relevant for the client.
Thanks, Tim. Brendan?
Yeah, there's a nice overlap here with some stuff that I've been teaching on innovation and international entrepreneurship, and the idea of the entrepreneurial mindset. So, you know, kind of how businesses are started. They all started somewhere by someone or somebodies working together to solve problems, resilience, tackling setbacks. Some of the things that you're talking about here are all about, why they started those businesses in the first place, what sort of skills and competencies and resources and financing they brought in that they needed to make it get going. And then, how the businesses that they started developed over time. But there's a lot about the people who are driving them and leading them. And then, in the corporate world today, people get a business to a certain size and then sell it off, or they persevere and they want to kind of keep doing it. I think for us here in this community, and as somebody who's come from primarily working for other people and being paid and comfy jobs, people setting the objectives for me, moving more into a consultancy realm. I'll be honest right now that I have a bit of both going on, but in the future to completely be reliant on consultancy is where I want to be. And that idea of being able to collaborate, being able to learn new things, being able to think about opportunities to exploit them, and knowing the value that I can add in that space is really, really part of having that mindset. If I just go into every organization and do the same things all over and hope they pay me, I'm going to run out of that over time, because other people will also be in that space. So I need to be innovating. I need to be developing myself to be able to add that new value as the world evolves. So yeah, I'll happily share with you, Tony, some of the stuff I've taught, because I think there's a lot of literature in that space. But the idea I think that you're focusing on here is about personal development, whereas organizations, stages of growth, grinder and all that sort of stuff, they're what organizations do, there's completely different set of aspects to that, because that's multiple people involved in that.
No, absolutely. This is much more for looking at it from a personal perspective, but personal perspective, either when you are independent and building up a consultancy practice or working in a corporate life, it's very much focused upon those 5 areas. As an individual, you're going to come up with challenges, you're going to come up with difficult people, you're going to come up with you've got to try stuff and it doesn't work. It's how you respond to that situation will determine, in my opinion, whether or not you've got that growth mindset and I'm going to learn from this and I'm going to work out what I need to do differently, and I'm going to go out and find those new skills and or collaborate with different people to get better at doing this and moving things forward, as opposed to, oh my God, this is not for me, I'm moving away and I'm going back to what I've done always done. So yeah, absolutely. And there is definitely some synergy between that and the organization, because that can become the organization's culture as well. But as you said, there's loads of other stuff around that, Brendan. Totally agree. And absolutely, let's chat that through, because I think it's an interesting an interesting area that we could cover off in due course on another one of these.
Tony, what I've also found is, because I've made that decision to try something new, and Kim has already gone down that route, and I'm still in that formative stage. But what I've found is talking to other people who are on the TLH network and hearing them and hearing the really positive feedback that they've given, but the advice they've given is fantastic. It's been really encouraging to say, yeah, I can do this. And that is always, if you surround yourself with positive people, or if you don't stay around negative people. Unfortunately, I've got that mindset. But if you surround yourself with positive people and you talk to positive people, you think, yeah, I can do this. They did it, and that's what they say. Yeah. I did it. You can do it, and you've got to look at this, and this. And it's a really good sort of springboard to, not for your mindset. Say, yeah, I can do this, and it's having that positivity that you just think, yeah, this is really good, and I am going to do this. And you get setbacks, but then you talk to someone else and they give you more positivity and say, of course you're going to get setbacks, don't worry about it. And you just keep going. And the items that you said, I would also add openness to that, to be open to possibilities. You're not specifically seeking them out, but when something comes up, you grab it and say, yeah, I can use that attitude, that mechanism, that process. And also, I was don't be afraid to. Someone at Deutsche Bank told me, steal with pride. If you steal someone's idea and use it, it's you're almost paying them a compliment. Not you don't have to come up with it all on your own.
Absolutely, and yeah, I like that. Still with pride, but it is.
Yeah.
There's no new ideas. Everyone's tried stuff, so you know you'd be foolish to try something completely new if someone's already tried. If someone's already done, let's go and do what they've done, see whether it works, learn from it, and adapt it as you move forward. And that's that continual improvement.
Well, not to embarrass you, Kim, but yeah, Kim's given me some really good feedback and really good ideas, and that positivity. And what you said about the fees the other week was great. You know, yeah, and we did, and we don't undersell yourself, because you know you've got to believe in yourself and believe that you're worth that. And
It's
If
interesting.
you're gonna look at growth, I mean, particularly if you're looking in a consulting business, it's difficult to leave a legacy at the end of it from a consultancy business unless you've done that in a fairly innovative way. And talking to Tony about this earlier on. So my challenge now is I'm a NED for 5 firms, all of which are in the fintech space, where they don't pay you fees, but they pay you equity. Now that gives you a downstream revenue, but you've got to have faith that some of those are actually going to come off and materialize. Having done that quite a few times in the .com era, and then when the markets have been strong, that's worked very well for me, but not to pay the mortgage. So you've got to find the right balance. And in doing so, looking at your future roadmap, what you've got in the pipeline, that point that Tony made there, investing in your pipeline is critical. But at the same time, you still got to find something that actually pays the bills day to day. And trying to find that balance in your business model is key. But most small consultancy firms don't end up with a letter. So for 18 years, I worked with a co-director who decided he wanted to retire, but left no legacy at the end of it. And for me, it was easier just then moving to my own consultancy business, which I already had running alongside it. But the thing to look at is what's going to give you value in the future, and are the things you're working on now, where genuinely you have to be able to put that thought leadership into play. And I do genuinely believe that you will have unique ideas, but you've got to invest in that supply chain. So to me, the biggest area of trust is the supply chain, the people you work with. Because if you don't have faith in them and they end up reneging on what they're doing, going in a different direction, you can find yourself high and dry. So some of the discussions that I had earlier on with Don, building the relationships, you know, in Don's background with your Capgeminis, your Ernst & Youngs and your bigger firms really will pay dividends when you're regarded as a subject matter expert and you're called upon time and time again to go and provide that expertise, but you've got to keep that knowledge fresh.
Yeah.
And for me, the biggest realization in the last 3 years, I had to refresh my knowledge in cloud computing, in a lot of the areas around open banking. So ever since PSD2 came in, I realized I had to refresh my knowledge at that level to a level where I could be regarded as a quasi-expert in that field without actually selling my service on that, because it was the way that you got through the door.
And you're right. It's that continual learning is critical, and it comes back to that sort of the skill set that I was talking about earlier. And coming back to what Neil was saying, I think you picked up on an interesting point there, Neil, around language, inner language, and we're a lot of the time we're very quick to go, well, I can't do this, or I can't do that, and changing that to I don't have the knowledge to do that yet is an important differentiator, really.
It's almost an argument in the mirror to say, you can do this.
You can.
The mirror's telling you, no, you can't do that. You're not good enough. You haven't got the experience or the knowledge, and the mirror image is telling you all the negatives, unless you're very arrogant. But you know, mine is always the doubter.
But I think if you include that word "yet," that turns it from looking backwards to looking forwards, and that's a critical aspect, I think, of that growth mindset. If you're constantly saying, if you constantly find yourself saying I can't do stuff, you've got that sort of static mindset, that sort of you're not going to be moving forward. But if all you do is put that yet in, you're suddenly starting to look to the future. and
Potential. You see your own potential.
Yeah. And by adapting those 5 things that we covered off earlier on the back of the yet aspect, you're starting to look to the future, and that will start to incorporate that growth mindset.
Kevin, I've got a question for you. The NED roles are very personal by their nature because they're taking you onto the board. Rather than your consultancy, that they want you as a person because they value you rather than your consultancy. So do they detract from building a legacy and a business being a non-exec, although they're good for you personally because they, a revenue stream down the line, you will get, if they sell it, you'll get the rewards. But in building a consultancy, is that, against building a legacy and a consultancy because it's taking your time away from building your pipeline and etc.?
I think, as I said earlier on, I think my business is me. I took a conscious decision that I did not want a business with FTEs. So to me, they're one and the same thing. The legacy I'm building, with whether it's my limited company or my personal consultancy business, is that there is a legacy there with all. And again, I probably ought to make the point as well. I in most of the things I do, I like to make sure the commercials are watertight, because that aspect of it, getting the right level of legal counsel involved, is critical. So when you make sure that you sign up to something, whether it be a referral agreement or anything else, that somebody is on the hook for that downstream when you've stepped out of doing all the heavy duty lifting, when most of this work is front loaded, getting through FCA permissions, finding the first, second, third round of funding, etc. And once it goes into BAU, you're then in an advisory role. But you're 2-3% of the company, you want to crystallize in 3 to 5 years' time. You want to make sure that's in the bank. That company could fail, and a lot of firms don't succeed.
Yeah.
But and therefore you're going to have bandwidth. But I see that as very much part of my business. But I am, as I say, I'm not trying to build a multi-consultant business anymore. I've done that, and it takes up a lot of your time, your bandwidth, and I tend to be more of a strategic thinker. And in today's very politically correct world, I'm probably a bit of a dinosaur in that space. I do a lot of work on social value, ESG, around disruptive technologies, etc. And whether I fully believe in it or not, that's another matter. But the HRE type things, I've probably been there, seen that's not my strength area. But I understand how critical it is to sort of boards of growing firms where they've got to look at all of those metrics.
Yeah.
And it's pretty key at the moment when you're looking at things like hybrid work at the moment, which I'm doing a lot of work on, is actually this sort of leveling up is likely to have the law of unintended consequences, because I'm now finding clients in Lincolnshire now earning London salaries, but being based still in Lincoln or Grantham. And that's not what the firm intended. They're suddenly finding these 8 grand, 10 grand pay lifts are really crippling their business model because of the consequences of COVID and accelerating things. So there are a lot of areas here where unfortunately, I may sound a bit negative, but my business thrives on people who haven't planned their business effectively. So when a new FCA consultation comes up and the board haven't thought about it, but it's going to be implemented in 6 months' time and could have the effect of shutting their business model down, that's where I thrive. Yeah. Because, and that's where the prep comes in. Being ahead of the game on the knowledge is crucial.
No, and I think, we're all different people, we all have different aspirations in terms of our businesses. But probably the one consistency is that more often than not, we get called into organisations because they've got a pain point, rather than where they've got something to go for on that sort of growth aspect. And it's not, we don't tend to get pulled into stuff where they've got opportunities. It tends to be because they've got a pain point. More often than not, I think probably 70-30% in certain my experience anyway. But fundamentally, how you go about doing that, whether or not, as Kevin was just saying there, his focus is on doesn't want the complications or the complexities or the challenges, shall we say, of managing big teams, because he's done that and been there and got the t-shirt and all that sort of stuff. He's now looking for much more sort of, my words, not Kevin's words, simpler life. And I can absolutely understand that. But other people within the group are very much about focusing upon how can we build something that is sustainable, that is not dependent just on me exchanging my time for money. And it's understanding those differences and understanding what you need to be putting in place to allow you to do both. Because fundamentally, it's the same principle, it's the same approach, isn't it? About how do you position yourself in the right way? How do you generate opportunities, client opportunities? How do you build those relationships, and how do you convert those relationships into paid money? And that's to a great extent what the 1% Club is all about. I know we're coming up towards the end. I did, for those people who are involved in TLH, I did share something that I put together back end of last week. Just let me quickly share my screen, and if I can ask you for some help, that would be really useful. We've created this scorecard, which is really helping to identify the across 5 core areas, your strengths and potential areas for development across a range of different aspects. So we look at mindset, vision, focus, engagement in sales and marketing activities that you need to be putting in place or have in place to drive a successful consulting business. So it's in beta version at the moment. So if you do get the opportunity to have a look at it and give me any feedback, because I'm quite keen to make it as hone it as much as possible to make it as valuable as possible. Any feedback would be gratefully received.
Could you put a link in the chat?
Yeah, I'll do that now.
Yeah.
Tony, I've completed it. I think on some of the areas where it's scoring you quite highly, you probably ought to need to drill down a bit more, because there are elements that, without trying to present my business as being fantastic, because there are a couple of areas I've scored myself quite harshly.
Right.
But there are other bits you do end up looking like you've got a very successful business when actually that wasn't the intent.
Right. Okay. I'll have a look at that. Thanks, Tim. I've just shared the link in the chat. We're coming up to the end of the session. Any final points to raise, or shall we close off now? Okay, well, thank you very much for your time and your input. We have recorded, although I pressed the button slightly late today, but it will be uploaded onto the Facebook group later on today, tomorrow morning, and into YouTube for those that don't have, or for Neil basically, who doesn't.
Thank you.
Adrian,
Yeah.
put your hand up.
No, I'm just clapping.
Oh, sorry.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
Yeah,
Well,
sorry, I'm a Facebook denier.
Yeah, don't worry. So hopefully we will see you next week, which will be the last one before Christmas. And so I will send out an email with the contents of that over the weekend. But once again, thank you very much, and speak to you soon.
Thanks, Tony.
Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.
Thank you,
Bye.
everyone. Take care.
As I mentioned in the session earlier, we're in the process of launching a new program entitled Creating Wealth from Consulting. So if you're one of those people that are looking to pivot from project to project existence to building and scaling a consulting business, I'm sure we can help. If that is for you, here's an outline of the approach that we're going to be taking. And if you want to know a little bit more about it and understand a little bit more about what you need to do to build that consulting business successfully, book in on a free strategy session, and we can look at your positioning, your offer, and get that into the market to build and scale a consulting business. So I look forward to seeing you very soon.